They're climbing in to duel in the desert. Arizona, Phoenix, the cities whose sprawl continues unrelentlessly. And yet, every time you come here, you're once again reminded and amazed by how beautiful the scenery is and how tight the racetrack is. It's going into the mid-70s today, the 80s tomorrow. Sunny skies, beautiful day to go racing, and the Sprint Cup cars are on track. Hi, everybody. Mike Joy, Larry McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip with you. And I'm reminded of your comment as you looked out over the racetrack. Yikes, this is tight. And you do. You forget. Every time you go away, you go, okay, got away with another one. And then you come back, and it's like, yikes.
Yeah, but I tell you, I love this little joint right here because it's different. It's just enough different that it's fun to drive on. You'll hear these drivers say we have fun when we come here. Really demanding getting down into turn one. Hard braking, down on the nose. Got to get the car in there and get it without getting loose. Don't overdrive the corner. Then you sweep up off of two. Really, and you really do. You just sweep up off that corner, clip that wall, and then go down there and go through that little kink. I mean, it's not even a dog leg. It's a kink. Then you roll her off into three, gas her back up, and bring her home. It's a fun place to get around. I'm
glad you're excited. Sounds like you had a fun week off, too.
I did. I
built a lot of energy up inside.
I'm up on the chip.
All right. Well, we're ready to get at it, but getting at it is different here in Phoenix, Larry, because this is not the normal race weekend schedule we're used to.
Totally different from anything we've ever had. We go to Talladega next week. It's going to be an impound race. We'll have practices on Friday, qualify on Saturday. You can't work on the car. NASCAR impounds them after qualifying before the race. Here, it's what they're calling a modified impound. And what I mean by that, all of the practice sessions will be before qualifying. The teams qualify later on the day, but they can go work on the car. So that's going to be a real challenge for these guys because remember, this is one of the shortest races that we run. 312 miles, 312 laps. So you want to qualify good, you want to start up front, but you've got to focus today on getting this thing ready to race. There's the kink that Darrell was talking about in the back straightaway.
Maybe it's challenging at times, especially when you try to go through there three wide.
But Darrell, there's no question, the two ends of this racetrack are totally different. Turn 1 and 2 is very tight. Turn 3 and 4, it almost reminds me of turn 3 at Pocono, very long and sweeping.
You really got to not overdrive turn 1. As you see the car come off to, let's see, that's Casey Kane. And this little dog leg right here in the back. Well, now let's see, where's he at now?
He's going off
He's off at turn 4 now. Yeah. Coming down the front. But here's where you got to really be careful here. You can overdrive turn 1 so easily, get on the brakes so hard that you can't get the car to turn. And to qualify, you have got to drive that yellow line. Matter of fact, you're going to see some guys on the apron with the left side tires trying to get as much grip and as much room as they can to slide up off the corner.
Here's a look at this speedway. Dimensionally, it is 1 mile. It has a little more banking in 1 and 2 than 3 and 4. And the backstretch has a little bit of a bank to it in the area of that kink. And the backstretch, of course, is longer than the front stretch by not quite 400 feet. Who's the man to beat in Phoenix? No question. It is Jimmie Johnson. Here's Matt Yoakum.
Mike, it's already been a big weekend for Jimmie Johnson. The Jimmie Johnson Foundation sponsored the 150 last night, the Camping World West race here at the Phoenix International Raceway. He's also, like you mentioned, if you're going to put money on somebody here at Phoenix, lately it's been Jimmie Johnson. Now he's looking for 4 straight wins here on the Desert Mile. And Chad Knaus not holding back, bringing out, showing just how much this team has gained in confidence and motivation here, back like how they were last year, 18th to 2nd in the championship standings over the past 4 races. They brought out a brand spanking new race car, and what a way to debut it. P1 on the board, quickest so far. Chris Devoto.
Well, it was a very good off week for Jeff Gordon. The last time we saw you, he was the one celebrating nearly a year-and-a-half winless streak, his first win at Texas. Speaking of first, Jeff Gordon said that is exactly how he felt. He felt like he was going to victory lane for the very first time. That's pretty big, coming from a guy who has been there 82 times. Now, he finally checked this track off his list 2 years ago. Jeff said he sees something in his crew members' eyes right now, but what I noticed down here, all of their smiles.
And you know, going back to his teammate Mike and Darrell, the 48 car of Jimmie Johnson, yeah, they're trying to win 4 races in a row here at Phoenix International Raceway. The last group to win 4 races in a row at a racetrack was that group at Lowe's Motor Speedway. But to me, when I look at the numbers that he has here, he has 11 starts with 9 top 10 finishes, but the most amazing thing, he has completed every single lap of those 11 races, 11 finishes on the lead lap.
I think one of the things that makes him really good here, Larry, is, again, you got to play with the brake and the gas here. You got to be able to use both feet really well to get a car down into turn 1 with good speed and not upset the car. A lot of guys overdrive the corner and they jump on the brake and they get the car all out of shape and they keep screwing with the car like that. But Jimmie Johnson is so smooth on the brake.
Second quickest, Martin Truex Jr. His lap just 2/100 slower than that of Jimmie Johnson. Then it's Tony Stewart, Greg Biffle, and Matt Kenseth. But here's Truex, who is second quickest.
Back over at 3 and 4.
Jamie Mack has brought the caution out. You see him top of the screen trying to get down to pit road. Ooh, pancake that right side pretty good.
Boy, he did. And it's so easy to do here. Turn 3, you almost go down a hill. You feel like you're going up over a hump and down a hill into turn 3, and you can get loose so easily right here.
He'd already had pancaked it there. I was just looking at the scoring monitor. He'd run 4 laps. This was his first time out. He was 21st quickest. There's actually quite a bit of damage to that right front.
Yeah, you can see the left rear tire is pushed out from under the body a little bit. That means that the track bar in that area in the back of the car is probably tweaked a little bit, which is hard to fix.
And that's the last thing this team needs. You know, it's kind of been unspoken. The story broke in one of the papers this week that with Jack Roush having to contract to 4 teams at the end of this season, that the team that is likely on the bubble is Jamie McMurray's number 26 team. So this is not the start to this weekend that they needed.
And I know they were pretty excited about this race because they finished 3rd here in the fall.
Speed's coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice brought to you by True Value, the tools, products, and expert advice for all your project needs. True Value. Start right, start here. The track is reopened for practice as Jamie McMurray and team have a look over the right side of the number 26 Ford.
There's something going on in turn 1. I think there's oil down there, guys, because I saw several cars go into turn 1 and just take off, almost smacking the fence down in turn 1. I believe they got the oil condition down there.
Red flag back out for the second time in this session.
Just going back to the 26 car, looks like right now Larry Carter and that crew are evaluating, possibly trying to repair that car. I didn't see any scrambling trying to unload the backup car just yet.
Several cars back to the garage, including Michael Waltrip, David Gilliland, David Reagan, after just one try getting through turns 1 and 2.
Need to be corrected. Actually, Donnie Wingo on the 26 car.
And you know who the engineer is on that car, don't you?
Ain't even going to go there. Am not even going to go there. Larry Carter's actually over with Paul Menard this year.
There's a look inside that right rear wheel well. Looking to hope nothing is bent under there. Here's another look at what happened.
This is the first car I saw really getting here. The 7 cars right behind the 34 or the 36. I'm saying he gets loose, gets up the hill. Robbie Gordon comes right in behind him, about does the same thing, and then after that, everybody was doing it. So there's quite a bit of oil down there, I believe.
While they clean up, we will too. We'll ring the cash register just a little bit and be right back with Sprint Cup practice on Speed. "14 hours of NASCAR TV programming across all the networks. Here's what's on Speed on our Advance Auto Parts Friday menu. We are in the first of 2 practice sessions for the Sprint Cup Series. Then you'll see NASCAR Live, followed by Nationwide qualifying, and then NASCAR Sprint Cup qualifying. And sometime late into the evening, trackside.
It will be. We're going to have Martin Truex Jr. and David Stremme join our little Friday night party here in the desert.
Isn't that about midnight or so Eastern time?
I think it's somewhere thereabouts.
It's going to be my favorite trackside. I get to do the Lazy Boy Lounge.
Now, which driver are you going to do that with?
Mr. Truex.
Truex, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I get to lay back in the big chair.
As long as you don't go to sleep.
I'm not promising anything. It show's late, man.
The Wall Street Journal wrote up Dale Earnhardt Jr. last week. Apparently, he is aligned with a new GPS unit that calls out your turn directions in Junior's voice. And since that story in the Journal broke, all kinds of media outlets have had fun talking about things like pit stall, victory lane, and things you might have difficulty finding if you're listening to Dale Jr.'s voice. And that's, I guess everybody's fair game. So let's see what kind of weekend Dale Jr. has here in the desert.
He's going to do very well this weekend. I can tell you, this is one of his best tracks, one of his favorite tracks. I tell you how good this place is. My brother, when he was driving the 15 car, and Tony Uri was his crew chief, my brother almost won this race. He finished second. I think that was about 5 years ago. So Tony knows this place. Dale Jr. loves this place. They're in cars that have won the last 3 races here. This is going to be the weekend that the old 88 car is going to victory circle.
All right.
I believe it.
We'll see. Okay. Let's check with Krista on a driver who's had a rough start to the weekend.
Absolutely, Mike. That would be Jamie McMurray. You can see a lot of action going on down here in the garage stall of the 26. And yes, that is a 26. A little bit of it is rubbed off. You see the purple and gold Crown Royal colors, a lot of blue on the right side of that 26 decal. The crew working on the car. Jamie up at the front end talking with Donnie Wingo. Obviously, the caution out on the track for what they think is some oil. That's what Jamie thinks he got into. A little crisscrossing going on. They'll get the 26 fixed up and get back out there. Matt?
And here in the 24 garage, Jeff Gordon's already completed 11 laps so far early on in this practice session. An issue, though, for the 24, they have changed the starters. Apparently, the starter failed on the 24 machine. That's why it's up on jack stands, and they're going through all the process of swapping that out. Jeff Andrews from the Hendrick Motorsports engine department. Scott Maxim's been down here looking at the part they took off just to see if they can figure out exactly what might have failed. They've already taken that back to the hauler, and they're swapping things out, and when this red flag is lifted, the 24 will go back out.
Thanks, Matt. You know, I think it's cool. I mean, my nav unit has some Australian woman's voice on it. You can pick from about 8 of them. I think it's pretty cool you can get Dale Jr. to say, hang a left here on your navigation. I think the idea and the premise and hooking them to it is a really great idea. I think the timing of the announcement could have been a little better. That's
Especially
all.
considering,
That's all.
as I said on our broadcast at Texas, if it was not for pit road, they'd be having a pretty good year this year.
And Carl Edwards and a number of other folks.
Yeah.
Matt Kenseth.
He's not
This goes on and on.
He's not by himself. No.
That year was a very, very special year for us. And in a lot of ways, it was a year that we found kind of our stride and our confidence as a race team. And to win such a big event in dramatic fashion.
Hey, second place. This is now a foursome. Here comes Stewart.
3 wide down the backstretch. Somebody's got to give, boys, and Jimmy Johnson's going to pass them both on the inside.
You know, the All-Star race is a special race, and it certainly was kind of a springboard in a period of time that was really special for the 48 car.
The 2003 winner of the Nextel All-Star Challenge, about to give Hendrick Motorsports its 5th All-Star win. Jimmy Johnson in the Lowe's Chevy wins the Nextel All-Star Challenge. It's his 7th win in a Nextel Cup car at Lowe's Motor Speedway. This is his house. 5-point race wins and now 2 All-Star victories.
It is quite a special event.
Celebrating 25 years of All-Star memories. Don't miss the NASCAR Sprint All-Star Race on Speed, Saturday, May 16th, 7 p.m. Eastern. NASCAR on Speed. Be there.
Boy, that is coming up soon and right here on Speed.
29 days.
Inside a month and counting. All right, they continue to blow and dry the track, or blow dry it if you will, from the oil that is predominantly in turn 1, but there was a bit of it all the way around. So that is a speedy dry haze that you see as the trucks are hard at work, we'll go back down to the garage in Krista.
Well, we've caught up with Jamie McMurray, which was not easy to do because at one point you had the mallet, the hammer, and the cordless drill in your hand helping the team. Going to get the car back out there, but what happened from your take?
I'm not real sure. I drove down in there and it felt like something broke and then kind of felt like oil. So I don't know. I had a couple of guys come over just now and say that they felt like it was kind of oiled up too. So not real sure. Just drove down in there and you know, when you hit oil, there's just nothing you can do. You hit it and you try to save it, but just I don't know. They have a skill for that.
And you, obviously for a driver, frustrating not being in the car, so you take out some of your, I guess, don't have patience, so you work on the car in the meantime, right? Picking up all the tools.
I was not working. I was merely handing tools. They would probably yell at me if I tried to work on it. But we have a really long practice here, and then we have a little bit of a break and more practice. And we actually did the tire test here in January and had a really good test, so I feel like we'll be okay. They just have to get the car where we can drive it again.
Okay, one of the guys is asking for the cordless drill, so get back to work.
And, you know, I think we had mentioned earlier that Martin Truex Jr. right now is second quickest, and Jamie McMurray just talked about doing the Goodyear tire test in January. They brought 4 teams out here. They brought Joey Logano, A.J. Allmendinger, Martin Truex Jr., and Jamie McMurray to help develop the new left side tire that we're running here this weekend.
I got to go down and talk to that boy, though. There's oil everywhere, man. That's why I hit the wall. And, you know,
don't even question it, right?
There's oil all over the track.
Look, they have blown up so much speedy dry across the track, it's ended up on a lot of the race cars. So trying to get that cowl opening cleaned up on Michael Waltrip's car. Matt?
And catching up with Carl Edwards, 4th in both races here last year. You're on the left side of the board on the scoring chart early on. That's good news here. How's the car?
Well, we're trying a couple different things, and it wasn't that great. The first trick was fine in my car when I walked in here. We got the Scott's uniform, the Aflac hat. We got a real neat Subway Fusion, but
you're multitasking with your sponsorship colors.
I am, and I walked right by it actually. But Jason said we're gonna have no trouble spotting it. Looks good on the racetrack, and I hope we can get a little bit faster. You know, it looks like Jimmy's real fast, and hope Jamie gets his car worked out there. I guess there was a lot of oil out there, and we're all just kind of waiting to see how it goes here right now.
Well, the good thing is you can always walk back to it. It's not good if someone's getting into your car.
Right.
See, that would not be good.
Yeah.
What's the biggest challenge about racing here at Phoenix? We talk so much about the excitement. It's a Saturday night race, national network TV. For the fans, they always come out, sell out. But for the driver, what's the biggest challenge?
Well, you know, there's no real extra challenge. It's just a lot of fun. I mean, almost all of us grew up racing on Saturday nights, and I know as a fan, you know, I used to sit there with my family and watch the races. I mean, we love these Saturday night races. So, you know, I hope the fans enjoy it as much as we do. It's a beautiful racetrack. It's a lot of fun, and you know, it's just something cool about Saturday night under the lights. It's kind of a short race, so a lot of action, and it's going to be good. As long as, as I'm the only one getting in this 99 car, like you said.
All right, we'll let you get ready to get back into it here as practice is getting ready to resume. Mike?
You know, one guy that's probably not disappointed that all this is going on out on the racetrack right now with nobody out there practicing, David Ruderman in the double zero car. Remember, they come in here 11th in the Sprint Cup Series points. They had no fuel pressure when they went to crank the engine. These cars, almost all of them, and we talked about this a few years ago with the Waterman fuel cable system, the fuel pressure is driven, is picked up in the fuel. The fuel is picked up in the fuel cell by a cable that's driven off the back of the engine. That cable was broke, and they had no fuel pressure when they went to crank the engine. So they now have the cable changed, and they're ready to fire this double zero car up and get out on the track for practice.
Hadn't heard that much quite a while. You know, anybody having cable problems. They got that resolved. They changed the ends of the cables and been pretty bulletproof. Surprising.
Only 35 of the entries have been on the track so far. We'll update that number when they reopen the track for practice here in just a moment. NASCAR's biggest Friday night party is right here on Speed, or if you're here, it's out behind turns 1 and 2. Trackside will air at midnight Eastern time. Mark Truex and David Stremme will be along, so be there.
It's going to be hard for me to stay awake that late, Larry. I don't know.
Well, good thing is that's only 11 o'clock Nashville Franklin time, right?
Still late.
Okay.
Well, now, is it live at midnight Eastern? Or if people are at the track?
No, we do need to clear that up. If you're at the racetrack,
And Daryl, you're at the racetrack.
We're taping it at 2:45.
Oh my God! I hope you can stay up that long.
I just thought maybe somebody was watching it at home and say, man, I can't, poor guys have to stay up till midnight.
Well,
You know,
that's why they invented TiVo.
He goes to bed early and he sleeps late. A few years ago, he asked me what time we were in Sonoma. He said, what time are you going to the track in the morning? I said, 6 o'clock. He said, in the morning? I said, believe it or not, God made 2 6 o'clocks over the course of the day. There really are 2 6 o'clocks.
Mine just skips past all those numbers.
Right.
I like to get up around 8:30, have a couple cups of coffee, check the news, maybe tweet somebody.
Boy,
I'm just about ready for lunch.
And then slip on off to work.
Or to the golf course.
Track is open, and now 38 of the drivers who will attempt to compete in the Subway Fresh Fit 500 have been on track. Big entry here. You know, all the people early in the season who said, well, wait till you have that Easter break. By the time you get to Phoenix, you'll be having a hard time filling the field. Wrong.
48 cars here. Now, we do have one car that has been in every single race so far in 2009 that's not here, the 8 team of Eric Almirola. They have put things on hold due to lack of sponsorship. But we have Brandon Ash off the West Coast here. Yep. We have Trevor Boyce here from Canada that has not attempted a Sprint Cup Series race since 1994. He's here attempting to qualify.
Where's he been? Hanging out with Rip Van Winkle? Has he been asleep for?
No. Well, he's actually been up in Canada winning a lot of modified races. Actually, he's won a championship 3 out of the last 4 years.
All right, boy, there's a blast from the past.
It is. I raced against him a long time ago.
Sure.
He used to come over here. But you know, you're talking about the economy. I don't know. I'm not minimizing anybody that's or I'm not trying to say that there's not people that need help and that there's, but unemployment is around 8%. I think it's somewhere in that range. That means that 92% of the people in this country are still working, still paying their mortgages, still paying for their cars, and still going to sporting events. I know we got to help all those other folks out that are struggling right now, but golly, 92% of our people in this country are still doing almost what they've always done.
And the businesses that need a boost are out there working hard to get one. For example, this racetrack has been advertising all over town, including right there on the backstretch, $25 seats on sale for this race in an attempt to help ease the financial burden on fans and families who want to come to the race, but in this economic situation, you know, are finding it difficult.
Well, you remember at Atlanta, I think it was, when the tickets were, Kenseth won the Daytona 500. Right. They had that promotion that whoever won that next day, that's how much your ticket would be.
Yeah, his car number.
You remember it was $17. That section where those tickets were was sold out. I mean,
in
it was
15 minutes.
Full.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a loud and clear message to a lot of racetracks.
And in fact, it sold out so fast they put another section of seats on sale to accommodate the demand. And I think what they did with the second group was if you bought a ticket at regular price, you could buy a second seat for $17.
You know, speaking of seats, I'm looking at Kyle Busch in the 18 car, and what Kyle is doing this weekend here, he has a bunch of kids that are going to be here today and tomorrow as his guest, and they're actually from what we call the Sunshine Home in Mesa, Arizona, and this is one of the several children's homes that Kyle Busch's foundation supports. I know we always want to pick apart Kyle Busch about the things he does maybe when he's on camera or in an interview, but there's a lot of good things, like all the drivers, that he's doing good, especially here this weekend at Phoenix.
Here's a number that blew my mind. His souvenir sales last year were up 600%. I mean, you know, 600%, and I mean, he was not one of the bottom tier drivers before then. So when your sales have increased that much, you're obviously appealing to a lot of people out there.
Well, and that's in a market where most drivers' souvenirs are in decline.
Yeah, it's sort of flat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we love what he does on the racetrack, but Daryl, I go back to your DW rant from Texas. I think there's one exception right there, Kyle Busch. You're gonna get what's on his mind when he gets interviewed. The man will tell you in a heartbeat, finishing second pretty much sucks.
Yeah, it does. And you know what? If there were more of them like him, we'd have a racing riot.
Oh, yeah.
Because there'd be all kind of things happening on the racetrack.
A little lock up there for
yeah,
David
a little
Gilliland.
locked up the left front, getting down in there. You can do that real easy.
You know, a lot of people I see wearing Kyle Busch stuff, they'll say, you know, I don't like everything he does, but I like the way he races.
The brake line's loose or something.
That was Gilliland, I think.
Yeah, sound like this, not just locking up, must have shot a lot of fluid out of it. Maybe busted a line or something.
Tony
Brake line.
Stewart came here in 1993, making $5 an hour in an unheated machine shop back in his home of Indiana. Came here to run the Silver Crown race, and I think he finished second, and it paid a little over $3,500. And he realized not only had he found his calling, but that machine shop work wasn't all that much fun anymore.
And I'm going to tell you what, I know all eyes are going to be watching Jimmy Johnson in the 48 car. Can they win 4 in a row? I know Darrell said Dale Earnhardt Jr. go to Victory Lane Saturday night. That's a cat they better not take their eye off of here at Phoenix. One, he loves the racetrack, and just look at the way they're performing with this 14 car week in and week out, sitting 5th in the points.
Well, you got to have grunt. You got to have a lot of power under the hood to run good here. To get up out of turn 2 over there, drag racing with somebody. To get off of turn 4 to shoot down this front straightaway. And that's one thing they've got under the hood. We know that the Hendrick engines are strong and they're making a lot of power. And that's a big advantage here.
David Ruderman has his troubles fixed. He's 34th on the board, but he's been able to put 7 laps up on the racetrack. So
I was really impressed with David last at Texas 2 weeks ago. Sat on the pole, got that lap down because of a mistake in the pits, but was able to hang in there, got the lucky dog, got back on the lead lap, and he finished 11th.
Tell you what, his qualifying has been phenomenal this year. When you look at the 5 races that we've had regular qualifying sessions, taking out Daytona and Martinsville where it got rained out of those 5 races, 4 top 10 efforts.
Let's go to the garage and Krista.
Well, Mike, I know you, Larry, Darrell have been talking about this track and the nuances of it, how important it is to be able to turn in the corners, turn off the corners also. And Dale Jr. right now is having extreme trouble center and off. His race car extremely tight. His quote, real tight center and off.
Well, at least it's not falling down on the right front.
See that little thing right there? No longer does the crew chief always stick his head in the window and talk to the driver. That still goes on, but they pretty much will give him one of those little, what do you call them, Mike? Yeah, a tablet, and he can write notes on that. He can look at things that's going on as far as the practice session, the practice monitors, a lot of things that he can look at on that screen.
Sticking your head inside the driver's compartment after things aren't going so well is not a good idea. I think handing him that tablet would be a much better way to communicate.
And when you write on the tablet, nobody else is listening in.
That's right.
There's Matt.
Mike, Pat Trice and Kurt Busch talking things over, debriefing. They've only run about 6 laps. They lost a little bit of time at the beginning of the practice working on some mechanical stuff under the hood. He went out and ran his 6 laps. Says the car feels not bad, but it feels like it's rolling around a lot. They're going to change the front springs as one of the changes they're going to make. They're also probably looking at one other area that they were talking about on the radio that they discussed more once they got back in. But really, what a difference a year makes for Kurt and this team. 12 spots better in the championship standings as they come into Phoenix, a place that he went to Victory Lane back in '05.
Now, they're running the new Dodge engine. And one of the things, like back in the days when we would develop a new engine, whether it was from the old one to the 18 degree to the SB2, whatever, one of the growing pains that you have with the new engine is you make a big number. In other words, you can make 850, 60 horsepower, but it's all upstairs. It takes a long time to get that, what I call part throttle response, where the driver has some feel in the engine, so when he's not wide open, these engines have to be run wide open to make that kind of power. What you want is good throttle response, part throttle response. Sometimes it takes a little while to get that worked out. Kind of noticed that at Martinsville. Looked like he didn't have quite the grunt up off the corner that I'm talking about. Could be a problem here.
Good point. Mark Martin is one of 10 drivers in this field who has won at Phoenix. He won here in 1993. And some folks think Mark is overdue to visit Victory Lane.
Well, he missed the best opportunity he probably has had in quite a while right here last year.
Yeah.
Man, just a rolling of the dice. I mean, what did they have to lose? And brought the man in and put a little fuel in him. I think I'd have run him out if it'd been me.
Yeah, I know the car was running the full schedule, but Mark, all he was here was running a partial schedule. It's all about winning for him.
I need a win, baby.
Final exams at Drag Race High. This Wednesday, the Bulldogs and the Wildcats meet at the Strip, and it's time to put up or shut up. It's the final showdown. All begins with the Drag Race High Marathon starting at 5:30. And if you hang in there till 10 o'clock Wednesday, you'll see the season finale right here on Speed.
I'm just going to send out a little warning right now to all you basketball fans, college basketball fans. Watch out for UK next year. Got us a new coach. Things are picking up.
Where in the world did that come from?
Well, he said Wildcats. He mentioned Wildcats, man. Wildcats, Bulldogs, high school.
Durrell, around here, a Wildcat is a Buick they made in the 60s.
Was it really?
It's okay.
I just thought I wanted to get that in because
I'm so glad you did.
Calipari's up there. He's putting together a program, baby.
For the money they're paying him, he better.
Meanwhile, back at the track, Brian Vickers clocks in 31st right now in this session in the Red Bull Toyota, and we'll bounce the ball over to Krista.
Okay, from Wildcats to, I guess, the franchise of college. Never mind, that was a stretch. But I know where you're going with that, Darrell. I want to give you an update on the 00. A lot of talk going on down here in David Rudiman's pit stall. David came in and said his car rotated well through the center of 1 and 2. Not as good in the patches, is how he described it in 3 and 4. Rodney Childers, the crew chief, said, what are you talking about the patches? He said, I'm losing the nose down there of the race car. But he did say the longer it went, the longer the run, the better his car got on exit in 3 and 4. He said it would get tight first and then center loose.
A lot of that, again, some of that is caused by your foot on the brake. This is a track where you enter the turn so fast and you have to use so much brake. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if somebody have a brake problem here tomorrow night. We see that consistently here. You got to get your foot off the brake so the footing can take a set.
But you enter the corner so fast, Darrell, and you don't have that real low gear like at Martinsville to slow you down when you roll out of the throttle. They run a 486 gear here compared to like a 650 at Martinsville.
Yep.
Ryan Newman won the pole for this race last year, and I think he's getting a little tired of people reminding him that that's the last time he sat on a pole in a Sprint Cup race. Haas Automation is both Gene Haas
across the track at 1 and 2.
Gene Haas is the co-owner of this team, but Gene Haas Company, who makes most of the CNC machines used in American business out there in Oxnard, California. That company, Haas Automation, is also a sponsor on this car.
Well, his crew chief this year was Mark Martin's crew chief last year. If I'm Ryan Newman, I got him by the collar saying, work on the fuel cell. Don't worry about anything else.
Tony Gibson.
And wasn't it Mark that Ryan beat for the pole here last year? Didn't Mark start second, I believe?
Could have very well been.
Well, we will check that. Well, I say we. Bill Sloboda will check that out for us.
Got him on his feet. He's shaking his head. His hands are in the air. The answer is no.
No, it's not. Mark started 4th. Boy, you can't believe those press releases, can you?
Now, Kurt Busch in the 2 car right now, he's 22nd quickest. He's only run 9 laps. This will be Kurt's 300th career start here this weekend.
There's the man responsible for those $17 tickets that we talked about a little earlier, Matt Kenseth. Boy, 2 wins, and then well, that team just kind of fell off the chart.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. You know, you just get off to a great start and you're feeling really good about yourself, and that engine blowing up early in the race at Vegas, it just took the wind out of their sails, and they haven't recovered from it.
But they did seem to get on track at Texas. They had a good car. They qualified 3rd. They finished 5th, and that was even with the pit road problem. And what we were told is a lot of the issues with the Roush Fenway cars on pit road, like the 17, like the 16 and 99, had to do with lug nuts, maybe wheels that got glued up really late in the race. These wheels are glued up. The lug nuts are glued with like a yellow weather strip adhesive, and you have to have enough time for that glue to set up a little bit. We're hearing that they were having problems with the lug nuts falling off.
And I just want to say, here's an observation. People get all over Kyle Busch for, you know, sometimes saying things to his crew and spouting off a little bit. But you know, there are other drivers that do the same thing. They just do it a little more subtly. And I believe it was Matt that said something about at Texas, well, if we'd have been a little better prepared. Now, who does that fall back on? It doesn't fall back on the driver.
No.
And so some drivers have a way of sending those subtle messages. Others are not quite so subtle.
By the way, Elliott Sadler started second here last year.
Oh, good.
To Ryan Newman. Krista.
Kevin Harvick loves this racetrack. Right now, though, he does not love his race car. He said his car is as bad as it was. He said it feels like it was at Texas. And to refresh your memory, Kevin was very bad at Texas. Right now, they're making a right front spring change to get Kevin back out there.
Yeah, I don't know what they've done to Childress's cars, but they need to get it undone pretty quickly, because this is a track that if Kevin Harvick doesn't run good here, they got big problems.
There's his teammate Jeff Burton, who is 14th right now. Harvick is 9th on the board. Jimmy Johnson, Martin Truex, Tony Stewart continue to lead this practice session in Phoenix. Speed's coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice brought to you by the Polaris XP sales event, going on from now until April 30th. You better hurry. Now we'll let you chew on this one for just a little while. 48 cars are entered for tomorrow night's race, and that driver, Joey Logano, is not one of the 4 who were in the inaugural Cup race at Phoenix in 1988. 4 drivers in this field did compete in that race 21 years ago.
Alan Kwiatkowski won that race. That was Alan's very first career win.
Yeah, that's when he created the Polish victory lap.
Yep, that was a great day. Yep. So we'll let you folks put your thinking caps on that one, and we'll check with Matt Yoakum.
And Mike, I can tell you for a fact that Clint Boyer, not one of the 4 that were here that day for the very first race at PIR. Now, due to the difference in the schedules from a year ago and the chance that because we don't have testing like we did, Shane Wilson used the beginning of this practice session, went a little aggressive an idea that they wanted to try. They found some promise. They're going to back off of that a little bit because with about an hour left in this session, the car is way too tight. But like Larry Mack has talked about so often, is trying to find the balance of not unsettling the back and losing forward bite, but trying to get the push out of the race car. So they're going to make a couple of changes up front, 1 change in the back. The car, though, 15th on the board.
It's a challenge everywhere we go, but I think more so here, as we've talked during this whole 1 hour of this practice, you've got to get your cars to rotate and turn, go through the middle. But then the challenge begins, the fine line of the balance of the car, exit to late exit. You can't have the car shoving the nose, especially off turn 2, but off turn 4, you'll tend to get a little tail happy there. You want to get loose off the corner. So it's like walking a chalk line trying to find everything you're looking for with these cars.
I got the 4.
Okay.
Whenever you need them.
All right. I'll get with that in a second. Let's go one step further, Larry. Practicing at noon to race at night.
There's no question the first part of this practice was probably the most valuable information that you could gather, because it's heating up fast and this racetrack just loses grip. It's just like that next practice. I'm not sure what you'll learn whatsoever in the heat of the day, other than maybe making a little practice qualifying run for qualifying a little bit later on this afternoon.
Well, it seems like one thing that they have learned about this car and the tires that we're racing this year, they don't get tighter. You know, we've heard week in and week out, well, when the sun goes down, the track cools off, we're going to get tighter. That has not happened.
No.
They've gotten looser, actually.
Good point. If you're following along at home, Bobby Labonte was not one of the 4 drivers who was here in 1988. All right, Darrell.
Michael, Mark, Burton, and Joe Nemechek.
You have 2 of the 4. Michael Waltrip was here in 1988.
Sterling Marlin was one of them.
And so was Mark Martin.
Sterling, I didn't
and
see
Sterling Marlin was here.
And maybe Bobby Labonte. Or maybe John Andretti.
We'll give you to the end of the segment to work on this one a little bit.
Or maybe it was.
But you have 3 out of the 4.
And you only have about 40 more drivers to name.
I would not have guessed it either.
You mean there's one that you wouldn't have thought of?
I would not have thought of it.
Oh, I like that.
But we've talked about him.
Today?
Yes, on this show.
Jeremy may have been here.
I'll tell you what. I don't think he's on track right now, but when he comes out,
Give us a nod.
Put it on you.
Just
I
don't
will.
tell. It's just kind of
Okay.
so it looked like we figured it out on our own.
I think it's too late for that now, but okay.
I've narrowed it down to about 10.
Good.
I think it's awful, man.
I mean, 1988, a whole lot of careers have come and gone since then.
Oh, yeah.
Just looking at Bobby Labonte right now, he's 41st quickest. He's run a total of 21 laps.
You know, 1980 could have been Trevor Boys.
Could have been. Ding, ding, ding.
Could have been.
Very good.
Yeah.
Mark Martin, Sterling Marlin, Michael Waltrip, and Trevor Boys raced here in the inaugural Cup race in 1988.
Yep.
Where's Juan Pablo Montoya?
10th quickest.
Well, Martin is
27.70?
second. Martin's second, and Juan is 10th. So those cars are running pretty good today.
And you know, we were talking on our conference call the other day, Mike and Darrell, that this is one of the teams, one of the cars you almost wonder, okay, when are they going to go out of the picture? But they just seem like they are not going away. Brian Patty and this group, they finished 7th at Texas. Right now, they're 13th in the points, only 16 points out of the top 12. And I know you may say, gosh, it's awfully early to be talking about points, but I think the big thing, we had last weekend off. Now we have 13 races in a row, including the All-Star race at Lowe's. This is the part of the schedule, the longest part that we have, that will separate the men from the boys and the contenders from the pretenders. So it's this next stretch of races where I think we'll have a picture about who the championship players are really going to be in 2009.
Good point. Not much change at the top of the board. The top 5 remain unchanged as this hour of Sprint Cup practice rolls on. Jimmy Johnson paces Sprint Cup practice. Cars in and out of the garage as this hour rolls. Then we're going to take a break. We're going to have another round of Sprint Cup practice, which will be final practice, and that happens prior to qualifying, which you'll also see here on Speed later on this afternoon.
You know, Kevin Harvick was talking about not being very happy with this car. He's run a total of 10 laps right now. As far as just speed, he's 9th quickest, but I think Kevin knows this car doesn't feel like he needs it, that he's going to have to race it.
Yeah, that's the big thing about coming to a track that you really like and you understand and you know what you need to be successful. You might be 9th quickest, but you don't like what you're feeling, and you got to fix it.
They've got a neat thing going on the trunk of Kevin's car this week. Pennzoil does, is they want people to sign up online and pledge to recycle their drain oil when you do your old oil changes. Now, back in the day, cities and towns used to use drain oil and spray it on gravel roads to keep the dust down. We used to, I'll confess once, to draining the crankcase over a storm drain. You know, way back, we just didn't know any better back then, but we sure do now. And that drain oil needs to be recycled and not just end up back in the ground somehow.
Yeah, I agree. And I was just watching his car get down into turn 1, and I think you don't realize how bumpy it is getting down into turn 1. There's a couple of little dips and dives down there, and that really sets the car. It really upsets the car quite a bit, particularly when you go in there hard braking. And this, I'm sure we won't see it from his in car, but maybe we can look at the dips in the track and see if there are any distinguishing marks there. There's a couple of bumps right there, but you can really see the back end of the car bounce up and down as it enters turn 1.
Darrell, I think you could also see what you were talking about earlier down in 1 and 2. He had those left side wheels down on the apron. These guys will really be using that, especially down in 1 and 2. It actually helps the car turn, a little bit of grip down there.
Oh yeah, those left side tires, they get real happy when they get on some pavement down there that's hadn't been raced on all the time. And of course, the left side tire is a big improvement in these cars from last year to this year. Goodyear's done a great job of softening up that left side tire and making it really give these cars some extra grip.
Harvick is done with this run. Let's check with Krista.
Juan Montoya has brought his car in. He was out of the car for a while before this run. They were working on the right front. When Juan went out, they said, times are good. The car felt good. He said his car's getting a little better off, but still tight. Juan asked Brian Patty if he took camber out. Brian Patty said no, they just worked on the right front. They think they went a little too far, so they're going to go back a little bit on the changes they made on the right front of the car. But Juan right now is pretty happy.
One of the things you work on at this racetrack, high speed, pretty fast down the straightaways, what we call anti-dive. And that's the angle of the upper A-arms. You angle them up in the front if you're trying to increase anti-dive. You let them down in the front if you're trying to, I think I'm correct about the up and down, but that's how you adjust the anti-dive. So when you're coming down that straightaway and you hit hard on those brakes, you got to have the right amount of anti-dive in the front of the car, or it'll shoot up the racetrack with you. So they can play around with that with those little slugs that they play with.
Jeff Gordon coming off that big win, 6th on the board. Denny Hamlin 7th. Earnhardt, Harvick, Montoya, the top 10.
And you know, Darrell, talking about front end stuff, as I walked through the garage here this morning, one of the things that just blew my mind, you heard Krista mention the word camber, was how much negative camber these cars are running in the right front. The more negative camber that you run, the more it helps the car turn. In NASCAR mandates you can't run more than 8 degrees, and I will guarantee you almost every car I looked at had 8 degrees. But one thing they're doing, Darrell, while we're on the subject of front end geometry, they run a very long upper control arm, and that way it doesn't gain as much when the car travels. They start out with a large static number.
Yeah, and because that just, if it doesn't gain a lot, it gives you a more consistent feel getting into the corners here under heavy braking.
Got a big group of cars, including Joe Nemechek, who must get into the field on time.
Again, I think if you just watch the cars, some of these cars as they go around this racetrack, you'll notice that they jump up and down a lot. This track is pretty bumpy in several places.
Big field here, quite a few of the part-timers and West Coasters like Brandon Ash and Trevor Boyes.
There's another go homer, Dexter Bean, out of the ARCA series. I talked to Dexter this morning. They attempted to qualify for the first 3 races of 2009. Dexter actually attempted to drive it at Las Vegas, actually wrecked qualifying. He told me they just decided to regroup a little bit. They moved their team back up to Wisconsin, and now they're just going to run a very limited schedule, picking and choosing their races rather than trying to just do every single week of this schedule.
You know, you got to feel really out of touch when you're that far away from the racing industry. You know, it would seem odd just coming to the racetrack every week to me.
Welcome back to Phoenix. As practice rolls on, no change in the top. Wow, no change in the top 42 since about the 5th lap of practice, as it gets much warmer here at Phoenix. Yeah. And the times go up.
Drive it, just no rear grip.
And then there's
side right in the back.
And then there's that.
Yeah, but there's no grip because the track is hot.
Yeah.
I watch every car go down into turn 1. Hardly anybody goes in there they don't get a little scooty and loose and sliding around. Watch Dale Jr. go down in here. And this is what I was talking about, using too much brake, and thing it just starts wiggling around with you, and you try to get your foot off the brake, but you're going too fast.
And all you can do is just slow the car down, regroup, and start over.
Ride her out.
Right now he's 8th quickest. He's run a total of 19 laps so far in this practice session.
But it's so frustrating. Your car isn't very good right now. You don't really like to run out there because it's so hot and it's slick, but your car isn't very good, and you got to work on it.
You know, you'd almost like to see a chart that instead of putting up the fastest lap, just has everybody's most recent lap. So you know how you are to your competition and not to some unapproachable standard that was set an hour ago.
Yeah, but you know the only lap that you compare everything to is Jimmy Johnson's lap.
That's right.
27.609. How close am I to that?
There's Paul Menard, Pete Antifreeze on the hood for the first time this year of the Menards Ford out of Yates Racing.
Tell you what, he had a good run at Texas, a good weekend. Qualified 5th and finished 13th, talking about Paul Menard.
Here's Matt.
Hey, Mark Martin's back out on the racetrack. You saw him get a little loose off turn 2, and they went up on the track bar. Mark said before he went back out, Mike, that the car was neutral. didn't really know what else he really wanted to try with it. He felt like the car was pretty good. The one adjustment that he wanted to make when the car comes back in, he told his team, I want to add one more strip of duct tape across the windshield to try to help vision dealing with the sun as he heads off. At this juncture, appears to be probably the worst, going down into turn 3.
David Gilliland continues to be a great story in our sport. We talked about in Texas, they may have to fold if they didn't get a sponsor. Well, David Gilliland has a new sponsor this week, American Monster. It's a television concept that highlights homegrown talent in things like mixed martial arts, of course, NASCAR, and monster trucks. Right now, David Gilliland's monster car needs a little forward bite off 1 and 2 and rotation off 3 and 4. But we are so glad to see David Gilliland, who's been a lot, guys like David and Goliath, kind of slaying the dragons here in NASCAR. He's back with a sponsor.
And just
There's a combination.
Absolutely. But just looking at our go or go home list right now, and again, this is just practice. We know that 5 cars will not make this show. The 5 slowest of the go or go homers: Scott Speed, Sterling Marlin, Dexter Bean, Brandon Ash, and Trevor Boyce. Dave Blaney is the fastest right now. You see, he's 21st quickest of the go or go homers.
And just to follow up on what you were talking about, comparing lap times to now and early, look at Jimmy Johnson's last lap. 28.81. Fast lap 27.6. I mean, that's over a second in difference in time right now.
And Jamie Mack's back out. He got into some oil apparently and got into the turn 3 wall early in this session, but they have made repairs, and Jamie's back out. First of 2 practice sessions today on speed. Today is hooked up with our Fox Sports supports and going to do a lot to benefit the Susan G. Komen Foundation.
Yeah.
Part of that NASCAR Day promotion, and we're certainly very glad to team up with them.
Boy, I'm seeing more and more cars really get loose off of turn 4 there. You can tell this track is getting slick.
Oh yeah, they're slip sliding around. Watch Reagan here. He was off into turn 1 there last time. He had her crossed up.
Now, he is 19th in practice. And big news on a positive note this week for one driver in that Sprint Cup garage. Matt Yoakum's with him.
And we've been following this story ever since Daytona when A.J. Allmendinger had a great speed weeks, and you've been trying to add more and more races, and you've locked in someone to carry you through to the fall.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's been fantastic to get Hunt Brothers on board. And, you know, obviously they came into the sport last year and kind of got a taste of it, and they really liked it. So we feel really fortunate to have them come on board and be a part of the car. They got a little bit of the side this weekend, and they'll have the whole car next weekend at Talladega. So we're pumped up about it, but you know, we'll focus on that when we get there. Right now, we got to get this Charter Dodge a lot better because we're not even close right now.
You're on the left side of the board, but looking ahead also to the future, as you always have to do in this sport to try to stay on top of things. For you, though, you've got a home here locked in through 2010.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's great. I really enjoy Richard Petty Motorsports, and the whole team's been fantastic. I really think that there's a lot that we can build on here to be better, and you know, I think the key word is stability, and I think we haven't had that in about 1.5 years on my side. So to be able to work with Richard Petty Motorsports, the whole team kind of work towards now getting the car better for this year, but really kind of find something to build on next year and go into next year and have something solid to start with is really important. I'm excited about it and looking forward to it.
Now, Charter's the primary sponsor on the car, but we'll look down here just in front of the bumper. Hunt Brothers Pizza. DW, I can see a big party at your motorhome with some Hunt Brothers coming up down the road here. That's some good stuff.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
But Darrell, that has to be relief. I mean, we've all been there at one point or another where we really didn't know what was going to happen for the next year, whether it was we were going to be there, whether it was going to be sponsorship. When you start getting those things in place, then you can focus on one thing and one thing only, and that's just running that race car and performing well.
But back to my little rant in Texas. Don't get too comfortable. Keep doing what you've been doing. Drive like this is the last race you're going to get to race in. Don't start looking at, okay, we got to start building for next year.
Yeah.
Next year's a long way off.
Yeah.
Let's just keep doing what we've been doing, and next year will take care of itself.
Well, a lot of these situations, like that one between Allmendinger and Elliott Sadler, whom we were just watching in the 19, they don't depend as much on performance as they do on leverage. Sadler had the leverage in his contract, get him back in that car after they announced they wanted to put Allmendinger in it. And here A.J. Allmendinger, yes, he's had the performance. He's done really well this year. But when suddenly another team started inquiring if he might be available, then he had the leverage. The team responded. And the good news is he now has a home through 2010. They've picked up his option for next year.
And I'm happy for him because he deserves it.
Absolutely.
But don't lose that desire. Don't lose that fire that you've had to prove people that you can do this. Keep proving that you can do it.
Now here's a car that needs a rebound. Denny Hamlin, at this point in the weekend in Texas, was the fastest thing around. I mean, greater than sliced bread. You know, he led the league. He was in the top 3 in best lap, best 5-lap average, best 10-lap average, all the way through practice. Qualified well. What happens in the race? He gets up to 13th place and stalled out, and the car just never went any further forward.
And I think that surprised everyone.
Yeah.
I know it surprised me because walking through the garage area on Sunday morning, all the fingers were pointing at that 11 car. But talking to this group, they have suffered that a lot, where they've been really, really good in the practice sessions, even on long runs, but for some reason on race day they couldn't back it up.
You know, the only thing I'll say about that is you as a driver, you've got to learn what I need, not at the beginning of the race, not at the end of, not at the middle of the race, but how am I going to be at the end of the race? I think that's where Jimmy Johnson and Chad obviously do a great job. They can run a race backwards. And you know, just racing that, this computer is the worst thing to ever put in the garage area, because that's all you race. All you worry about is how fast you are for one lap. Forget that thing. Just get that car comfortable where you can drive it hard all day long.
Well, the only one lap all weekend, aside from the last lap, that pays any money is where that fellow Ryan Newman is good, and that's that qualifying lap. Krista's in his garage.
Well, Mike, for about the last 20 minutes, the team is just working on overall grip. After that last run, Ryan said coming off the corner, he had better drive off, but he was starting to get a little free under throttle. As Ryan Newman brings his car into the garage, he said 1 and 2, really good. He's just losing a little bit of rear grip right now.
And he's run the most laps of anyone, Krista. He's run 43 laps, and what's amazing, you see his teammate, Tony Stewart, he's run the second most laps.
I see Bobby Hutchins there over the roof with the headset and the light colored cap on, the competition director for Stewart Haas. And I've just got a feeling they're just putting an extra amount of effort into getting Ryan ready to qualify and break that drought of poles that goes back 1 year. And they've run well. They've been in position to contend. And but, you know, Ryan's specialty is and always has been qualifying in these cars. And, you know, it'd be a nice boost to see him on the front row here if they can do it.
And you know, this is actually where he made his Sprint Cup Series debut back in November of 2000 as well, driving for Roger Penske.
In the heat of the day, the fastest of these cars recently is Greg Biffle with a 28.55, and that's just about a second off his fastest lap of the day. He's run a total of 29 laps. Trevor Boys and Bobby Labonte. Labonte is 41st on the board.
And Trevor Boys is actually the slowest of the 48 cars. Trevor, he's making his very first laps ever in this car tomorrow. He's never even sat in one until they went out on the racetrack earlier.
And you notice how cautious Bobby Labonte was as he tried to get around it. He didn't press him. He let him get up on the straightaway before he actually passed him.
Now, the rock on that car is not Rockingham, North Carolina, where the ARCA cars will race this Sunday on speed, but it's a track up in Alberta. Trevor is from Calgary, and it's a short track up there, Rocky Mountain Raceway Park. Let's go down to the far end of the garage. Krista.
Mike, want to give you a real quick update on one of our go or go home drivers, Scott Speed. Now, they lost a lot of time in this practice session. We did mention it's a long practice session, but they were back here getting the car fixed up after dropping that oil on the track early on. Right now, Scott Speed is out of his car debriefing with his crew. He said right now he's just too loose pretty much all over both ends of the racetrack, in and off both ends.
Now, I talked to Jimmy Elledge, the crew chief, who's sitting there talking to Scott Speed, and I said, Jimmy, you're one of the go or go homers. With this type of a modified impound schedule, with no time to get ready to race, are you going to work strictly on qualifying, or are you going to throw a little bit of a race setup? He said, Larry, we're actually going to start with a race setup. He said, because what we're finding with these bump stops and the way we run these cars, the setup from qualifying to racing is not varying that much. And he said it will give Scott more of an opportunity to get into a rhythm if we start off in race training.
I'd say probably spring-wise, you wouldn't change many springs. You might want to change the bar a little bit, or you might want to change the compression rebound in the shocks a little bit. But almost the things that you can change are what they do in the Nationwide Series, where you move the track bar a little bit, maybe a little wedge, and take tape off and go race. That seems to work pretty well.
And I do think a lot of them are maybe putting a little more nose weight in the car to qualify.
Matt, his teammate Brian Vickers and his dad Clyde spent Friday down at Barrett-Jackson. We talked to him on speed, and you know his dad's quite a collector. They got a '69 Camaro under restoration up at their shop in Thomasville right now, Matt.
Mike, they're all about passion, whether it's on the racetrack with a race car or the collector cars like you mentioned. Vickers, if you look at the stopwatch, it doesn't appear like he's having a great session. He's 31st on the board, but if you listen to the conversation back and forth between Ryan Pemberton and his crew chief and Vickers, you can see they're really a lot better. Pemberton was very pleased with their time on the previous time out on the racetrack for the time of day, and Larry Mack talked about it. You don't want to dial yourself out because conditions are getting warmer and warmer. The track is going to change, so they're pleased where they are. 3 top 10s this season. The 5th place finish at Atlanta was their season highlight, but you can see how this team continues to evolve and continues to build on momentum week in and week out.
One good thing about practice, though, is a lot of times it's as much for the driver as it is for the car. A lot of times you can say, well, you just got to run some laps and get comfortable. And then you can give me better feedback. If you have to go on the racetrack, every time you go on the racetrack, you got to run a qualifying lap. It's hard to give any good feedback because you're just concentrating on going fast and how the car is doing for one lap. Go out and run me some laps, get comfortable, then tell me what the car is doing.
But you know, Mike, what I would like about this schedule, especially if I was a crew chief with the top 35 guys, as they mentioned earlier, this is 2 very long practice sessions. I would almost use it a little bit for a test session. Remember, these teams can't go test anywhere that we race, so you could almost learn some things. It may not be anything you intend on qualifying or racing here this weekend, but it's information you can gather and put in your data bank for down the road.
Well, we'll take that one step further when we come back, having a look here at Casey Mears, because Phoenix is a race in the chase. Might some teams be using this first hour to try some things out, not for tomorrow night, but for late in the year? Tomorrow, not Sunday, but tomorrow, NASCAR Race Day flies into Phoenix. Jimmy, Kenny, JR, Wendy, and Hermie get you fired up for red-hot racing in the desert. NASCAR Race Day built by the Home Depot. Live coverage tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. NASCAR on Speed. Be there. And they're off turn 2 is the Hollywood Hotel, Suites, and Convenience Store. Jeff Hammond has really expanded his operation for Phoenix this weekend. In fact, over at the Speed Cantina off turn 2, they have a Jeff Hammond burger. All bull, no baloney.
I figured you were going to say a Jeff Hammond ham sandwich.
I thought you were going to say a Jeff Hammond hot dog.
Well, next we'll have to explain the Larry McReynolds tacos.
Oh boy, I'm not real sure about that one.
Neither
They
am
got
I.
any, they got any organic food over there?
Hard to say.
I think I'm going to stick with Matt and just get my Hunt Brothers pizza.
Yeah. Is it true you have to get a wedge adjustment after a serving of Larry Mac tacos?
No,
I ain't gonna go there.
No, but you do have to go to the track bar.
Oh, a wedgie adjustment.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I wasn't sure I heard Artie correctly. I guess I did. Jeff Gordon finishes up a 5-lap run. He's run 38 laps so far. Here's Kyle Busch in the 18. I'm sorry. We're getting just some great information from downstairs I can't pass along to you.
I challenge you on the great part.
Seems to have floated around the ether for a year or two here before it got to us. But let's see. Kyle battled for the lead in Memphis last week.
And it was in Nashville.
Yeah.
Yeah, there too. Oh, whatever. I told you it's bad information.
It's in Tennessee. Close.
Yeah, that Tennessee track.
Yeah.
The one where they run Easter weekend.
It could have been Bristol. It could have been Nashville. It could have been Memphis.
But I got to ask you, if you're going to get beat in the closing stages of the race, does it come down on you harder when it's your teammate?
You got that right, brother. I'd a lot rather Carl Edwards put a whooping on me than I had to have my teammate put a whooping on me, especially when he's 18 years old and he drives right by me on the inside. That would really tick me off.
But I think on the flip side of that, talking to Tom Logano, Joey's dad, he said the confidence that Joey had this week after beating Kyle Busch, nothing to do with his teammate beating Kyle Busch. I think it had to be such an upbeat thing for Joey Logano, considering the way things have went in the Cup Series.
The times I've seen Joey race, he raced just like he did at Nashville Saturday. Kind of lurks around the top 3 or 4, keeps the leaders in sight, but he seems to have a little knack for holding a little something back for that last 15, 20 lap run. Saw him do it at Avondale when he won out there. He just kind of held back a little bit, all of a sudden takes off. Saw him do it at Rockingham in that race they're having down there this weekend.
And I think Darrell, from again, I've seen him run a lot in the lower series. Doesn't that confidence come from knowing you have a car and a setup that can win?
Well, the thing about it is when you jump, I'm a little worried about this weekend again for him because he's going nationwide to Cup. They're 2 totally different feeling cars. I'm just worried about him making that transition to this COT. He seems to be able to drive those nationwide cars, the ARCA cars. He's got that figured out. He knows the feel he needs there. He's struggling getting the feel I think he needs in this big old heavy car that he's having to race on the Cup side.
Oh, I agree, and I think that's why he can't race this car the way he races that car and be in a position where he can do what he did last Saturday.
And you know, talking to Greg Zipadelli as crew chief, the one thing that Greg was excited about, you see Greg right there looking at his notes, this is the first time he has been back to a racetrack for a second trip with Joey. They did the Goodyear tire test here in January. He said, Larry, every weekend, the only way I know to start the car is how we pretty much ran with Tony Stewart. He said, I finally come in here this week and I can start with something that I've been to a racetrack with Joey Logano with.
Well, quickly, I'll just say this. I think it's obvious a driver can go and work with another crew chief. We see that with Tony Stewart and what he's doing. But sometimes a crew chief has a hard time working with a new driver, particularly one that doesn't have a lot of data or a lot of background or a lot of, history at racetracks. So, and Greg's right. All I can do is look at my notes from what I did with Tony. But that's not going to probably be what Joey's going to need.
Good point. Krista.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. sitting inside his race car. He said the car is a lot better into and off the turns, but like earlier in this practice session, just needs to turn a little bit better in the center. Before he brought his car in, he said it was a little tight, and I need to get a driver's opinion on this. So DW, the one thing he said, not challenging to drive it off the corner. Isn't that a good thing?
Oh, it's a great thing. What he means is he's not having to fight the wheel. He can roll it into the corner, get the wheels cut left, get back in the throttle, and not have to jack on the steering wheel. He can just kind of hold that pretty wheel all the way off the corner. Not challenging.
He's driving the car's not driving him, which happens a lot with this car.
I'll get my Memphis sorted out from my Nashville. I'll be back with you here in just a second. Who's in that 5 car? That's right. The Sprint fan vote is back. Wonder if Dale Jr.'s casting his right there.
I don't know, but I like that a lot. If I could just, I'd be a lot like Dale Jr. I don't really have room for that in here, but let me see what I can do with it.
But if you notice the little antenna on it, I think what he's looking at right now, he's looking at a practice monitor, just like what we have up here and what the teams have in the garage area.
He may be looking at a replay of his last run.
Yeah, I would
that
think
monitor.
I think he could probably look up there and see that monitor. I'm thinking it's a little more technical than that. He might be looking at his teammates.
Now, of course, telemetry is not permitted on these cars during practice, so he can't be looking at any readings directly taken from his car, except the timing data that's available to NASCAR and to the teams. There's Carl Edwards in his Subway Eat Fresh colors.
When you said that, it reminded me of, and this is kind of old, and Dale Jr. may or may not appreciate, but the commercial, remember he did where he said, I don't have Budweiser on the car, or in the car, I have Budweiser on the car.
That's right. So you're saying that Jared's not right. It's not a ride. It's not the Subway ride-along program.
That's right.
5 laps, 84.
It's Bob Osborne, his crew chief, giving Carl Edwards his lap times and telling him how many laps he's run. Right now he's 17th quickest, and he has run a total of 47 laps so far in this practice session. With this being a short race, and this doesn't have that hanging RPM, that sustained RPM like we had at Texas, the engine guys don't get nervous about you running a lot of laps in practice here.
This track, I just keep using this term because that's the only way I know how to explain it. You need grunt. When you get down into middle of 1 and 2 and you start up off that corner, you got a lot of steering and input. You got the wheels cranked hard left, and it really bogs down the engine. And you'd like to have more gear in the race particularly. And that's why you'll see guys that run the high line off of turn 2 over there blow right by a guy running the bottom line because the guy on the bottom can't get up out of the hole over there.
March of dimes on Denny Hamlin's helmet. A lot more charity initiatives as we move through the month of April.
Man, he's tucked in, isn't he? I mean, look how he's laying down in there.
The wheel is so close to him.
That's standard. I mean, I know it looks closer here than it really is in the car.
Well, what I kind of like about this, Darrell, and when I first saw this looked funny to me as it does to you, is look at the angle of his arm, very similar to the angle of the steering wheel. So all of this motion from this muscle is going in that direction to turn the wheel instead of having your arms extended.
Well, first of all, you don't turn the wheel with your right hand.
Okay.
You turn the wheel with your left hand.
All right.
And I'm just telling. I'm just telling. What you do is you pull down with your left hand. Your right hand almost becomes your sight. It's almost like when I pull this steering wheel down to the left, and that right hand gets at a certain point in front of my face, like his is right there. That's the angle that you want to steer. You know that's right where you want to be. So your left hand does all the work. That's pulling down on that left side, and that right one, sure, it's helping out. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
But I've seen times, and I've done it, and Dale used to do it. We'll take our right hand, put it over on the petty bar, try with one hand, because you don't really do. Sometimes both hands will mess you up.
Okay.
Now, different situation somewhat when they start using different hand where they hold the steering wheel, because if you hold it at 3 and 9, it's almost like both hands are trying to do a little bit of work there.
Right.
If you hold it at 1 and 10, the left hand does all the work, and the right hand is sort of a sight or a guide.
Okay.
But Darrell, it definitely looks like that Casey Kane has the steering wheel a little bit further away from him than what we saw with Denny Hamlin in the 11 car.
Yeah, and then he's actually laying down more in the car. That's another thing that you'll notice. Denny is a little bit more this way, and Casey is more like this. And what is Casey's background? You know, sprint cars and open wheel cars, and you kind of lay down in those things.
Okay.
So and now you want to see old school?
Sure.
Let's look at old school. And then Jeff Burton, he's going to have both hands pulling left. He's going to have both hands all the way over on the left side of that steering wheel, pulling down with both hands. That's how he drives. That's why he's consistent. That's why his car is always better in the race. It's a tight race car. These guys don't understand that you can have a tight race car and race good with it if you know what you're doing.
Right now, Jeff is 14th quickest. We've got a lot of the Childers cars that's up there pretty high. We talked about Kevin Harvick, he's 9th quickest. Their teammate Clint Boyer is 15th quickest. So we got 3 of the Childers cars up in the top 15 right now. Now there's a driver working on a car.
Speed's coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice brought to you by Toyota. For the latest in Toyota racing info, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward.
Oh, we only have one Toyota right now in the top 10, and that's Denny Hamlin in 7th. Now, we have quite a number of them on the left-hand side of our score monitor, but Denny Hamlin by far the fastest of the Toyota camp.
And the next fastest is Marcos Ambrose there in 13th. He is doing a heck of a job this year. I've been so impressed, and what a great guy. And Krista, you probably enjoy talking to him as well.
Every time, Daryl, that is exactly right. Marcus, you were under the wheel wells there checking. I heard you talking on your scanner about brakes. Is that your concern right now with this race car?
Yeah, we got a bit of front chatter. I got behind Junior out there, and I was controlling my brakes. I was a little bit worried they were getting hot. When I got behind him, I got a lot of shake in the pedal. So we're going to really look at it close here, try and make some good changes for the next practice, see if I can get rid of it. You don't want to have bad brakes here. But we're doing great. We've got Clark's out again this weekend, hoping for a good run for them, and just excited to be in the Cup Series.
All right, thanks, Marcus. Big smile on his face. He was 18th here in the fall, Mike.
And I think the biggest thing, they just got to get all of the bad luck out of their system. Him and Frankie Kerr are doing a great job. They had the engine failure at Texas, but I don't think it was totally the engine's fault. His throttle was sticking on him, and he was trying to drive it with the off-on switch until they could get the pit road and get it fixed, but finally it just over-revved the engine, and it ended up blowing up.
Something to watch for tomorrow night on our pre-race show. We're going to unveil a new feature with NASCAR on Fox. And no, it's not animated, but it is really going to test your judgment of what's happening on the track. It's kind of a quiz show that we're going to conduct online, where we're going to ask you to predict certain things that will happen in the race on Fox at Talladega. You get it right, we'll make you famous. Details tomorrow night in the NASCAR on Fox pre-race show. And the best thing about this, there's nothing trivial about it. You don't have to know the last time Trevor Boys raced at Phoenix or anything in the past. It's all about what's going to happen on track next week. And we'll find out who the NASCAR experts watching at home really are.
Yeah, it's a contest about what's happening now, baby.
You said it.
You know, we were just looking at David Stremme in that 12 car. Right now, David is 16th quickest, and he is by far the fastest Dodge. I know he was pretty excited because they continue to build new race cars over there at Penske Racing. And I know the fan may say, now, you guys keep saying you can't work on the bodies of these race cars. What makes a new car that they're building, a new generation, better? The biggest thing, this car, from what David's been racing, it's much lighter. It still has to weigh 3,450 pounds, but they're able to put a lot more ballast, a lot more lead in the car, which is down low, which helps this car, especially with a higher center of gravity.
I think the M&M's cars had his hands full, boy. I tell you what, I watched him slide up off turn 4 there a while ago. It looked like he was on dirt.
What's up with that, Matt?
Mike, almost closing time here, 6 minutes left in this session. Kyle Busch ran a 25-lap run before going back out, which you're seeing him on the track now. His response back to Steve Annington simply was, if I overdrive or overbrake going into turn 1, it really wants to step out. It's tick tight through the center at the opposite end down in 3 and 4 and a little loose off, but not bad. But also factoring in the conditions as the 18 car coming back in, they made a slight spring change in the back of the car, trying to get this car out maybe one more time. Now about 5 minutes left.
I think they must have added a lot of right rear spring to it, because I watched him a couple of times off 4 there, and he had to back in and hanging way out on that thing.
Well, you see Joey Logano just go past Jimmy Johnson there. Hi, how are you?
I think Jimmy may be doing something, trying something here. He wants to get all by himself.
Right. Oh, okay.
Well, it just appears to me, looking at the scoring monitor, that Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson with this 48 car, they have focused on race setup this entire practice session. They've run a total of 61 laps so far. His fast lap is 27.60. He's slowed down now into the low 29, so they're definitely working on race runs, long runs. And Mike, we talked about this being a short race. This race also is known for long green runs, just like we had at the end of the race last year when he won the race.
Tony Stewart, 3rd in this practice. And a winner here in his rookie season, 1999. Going to have a look here for Tommy Baldwin's car with Scott Riggs aboard. And they had a tough thing happen to them in qualifying at Texas. Didn't make the show, and it turned out they have a gauge they use to bump steer the car. And from what I read, the gauge was calibrated incorrectly. So they set it by the gauge, didn't have time to double check it, sent him out to qualify. And when the car settled down on the bump stops in turn 1, Scott found he was towed out about 2 inches and had to drag the car all the way through the corner, both ends of the racetrack. And as a result, wasn't quick enough to make the show.
And I talked to Tommy this morning, and you can see the stress on Tommy Baldwin. He looked at me and he said, Larry, we have got to qualify for this race.
Yeah. So it wasn't they weren't fast enough to qualify in Texas, but they made a measurement that turned out not to be reliable, and it bit them. Who says the 8 car isn't here in Phoenix this weekend? There it is. In all its glory, just the way it was when Dale Jr. drove it.
Looks like Lightning McQueen to me.
I was going to say it has a little bit of a car's look to it, doesn't it?
The last rush to get the last run in, but the starter has the black and red flags in hand. We are just about done with this first of 2 practice sessions.
Now, it's funny you say that, because if you're a spotter or you're a crew chief and you think there may be a caution on the race, I'm talking about during the race now.
Right.
You know, your spotter will call in and say he's got the flag in his hand, he's got it behind his back. So it kind of gives you a heads up to what might be getting ready to happen, and whether you want to pit or stay out, or you know, keep an eye on that flagman, because he might tell you something.
Michael Waltrip right now is 38th quickest. He's run a total of 36 laps. And there's A.J. Allmendinger in the 44 car. He's 22nd. He's run 36 laps.
And there are the flags. So Jimmy Johnson has won the first practice here in Phoenix. Conditions were different last fall, but Jimmy also won the first practice and went on to win the pole.
And right now, Dave Blaney would be the fastest of the Go homers, followed by Joe Nemechek, and Tony Raines is 3rd quickest of the Go homers.
Yeah, David Gilliland, Scott Riggs, Jeremy Mayfield, Regan Smith, Todd Bodine. And the fellows who will need to pick it up are below the yellow line: Scott Speed, Sterling Marlin, Dexter Bean, Brandon Ash, and Trevor Boys. But they have one whole practice session to work on it. Keep in mind, it will be pre-qualifying practice, and it'll also be final practice for tomorrow night's race.
Let's go down to the canteen. What do you think?
You want to have a Larry Mac taco?
Larry Mac taco and a ham and hot dog and a.
No, I want to get a ham and burger so I can get all full of myself.
There's a man
just kidding,
quickest
Jeff.
right there, Martin Drex Jr. Yeah, these guys won't have a lot of time to debrief. It's only a 30-minute downtime before they'll be back out there. But the thing they got to be careful with this track, sitting, it's going to even lose more grip in those 30 minutes.
But I love this little break right here. You can go in the hauler, sit down, relax for a few minutes, have something to drink, and talk about what you got and where you want to go from where you ended this practice. So it's a good thing. It's like halftime in a football game.
And that's what we'll do.
Draw up some new plays, Coach.
We'll send you over to NASCAR Live, and we will be back with final practice. Yes, you are going to the speed stage. Look at that big crowd on hand right there. Oh, that's a poster. Never mind. I'm sure they'll have a big crowd, and we'll be back with second final practice a little later on.